Hi, YouTube family. This is Ebony, and I am back with part two of the return of your kingdom spouses. So the Lord led me to again chapter 4 of Ruth, and wanted me to talk to many of you in regards to the return of your kingdom spouses. Okay, and so right now, as I said in part one video, that many of you are getting ready to come together in covenant, that God is getting ready to make these covenants that He has ordained come together. And the question is again, are you guys prepared? Are you ready? Okay, because this is a season where you should be in a heart posture of readiness and expectation. Okay. Um, this all is also a season where God is doing a lot of shaken, and judgment and stuff like that as well. So we want to make sure that, as we are preparing, that you make sure that there's no idols on your heart, okay? That there's no anything that could actually, delay what God is trying to do, and that's something that I explained a little bit in my part one video in regards to, just making sure that, you're blameless before Him, okay? Because a lot of times we can be, getting away of, what God is trying to do in our lives, and it brings on delay. So, we want to make sure that we are 100% blameless before Him, okay, as we're waiting, all right? Um, as I stated in the last video as well, is that many are you are waiting, but many of you have also, been weary, in waiting, okay, because of little to no communication about what's going on concerning your kingdom spouses and things like that, okay? And so I encourage many of you in that first video, to not be weary in well doing, that God has to again tie up loose ends when it comes to these kingdom spouses, that He can't just bring y'all together right now, okay, when it comes to again, these things, okay? Because first off, if I can be really, really honest, we can't again, enter anything in life without being again prepared, without God doing what He needs to do to make sure that we are in alignment, okay? And so it's the same thing with these spouses, okay? You have to make sure that, they have to make sure that they're in alignment in God's will, okay, for their lives, okay? And so you just have to hold on, you guys, and stay prayerful, and again stay ready, because again this is okay. There was a season where there was preparation, and many of you still have things, loose ends that you have to tie up, okay, with the Lord, all right? And so you're practically ready, but still, still doesn't hurt, and it's nothing wrong with making sure that everything that, the Lord has, told you to do, that you did everything to a T, okay? And so it's the same thing with these kingdom spouses. God is tying up those loose ends. And then not only that, the ball is now in their court, okay? Where it's not much you have to do besides continue to stand and pray for them, okay? Um, and that's pretty much it, okay? And so this part two video is just an extended version of what I was speaking about in regards to, again, what you guys can expect. There was also, testimonies of, again, things that the Lord walked me through in my singleness. I also encouraged many of you that are, single, that you should, this is the perfect time in your singleness to make sure that, generational curses are broken, off your family and your bloodline, okay, before you come together with the person that God has for you. And I gave you guys, testimonies about that. And I just encourage y'all even to today, that, just because it seems like, things are too long, okay, God is taking too long, you guys want to make sure that you're ready, all right? Because when God brings these kingdom spouses, I'm telling you, you won't have enough time to prepare. You won't even have time to even, be in a what is it, courting stage, okay, where you court for a while. It's not going to be that, okay? So that's why it is crucial in this time, in this hour, while you still have time left to, do the last preparations that needs to be done, okay, concerning you, going back to God in prayer and asking God, Okay, what else should I do? Is there anything that I have not released? Is there anything that I have not confronted? Things like that. Okay. And so, since I've given you guys that, I've already prayed over this word. I also want to say this too for those who are inclined to my videos. Make sure that you take this word back to the Lord. Test the spirits before receiving any word from anybody, okay? Because nowadays you have to really be careful. People be out here just speaking words, okay? And it ain't came from God, okay? Ain't nothing came from God, okay? They just speaking just to again get some kind of rating so that they can get their pages monetized, okay? I'm not even with all of that, you guys. When I come on here and I give you guys words, I'm taking my time, okay? Um and in my study, okay, to dissect and break down the word to see what God is saying to me to give to y'all, okay? And so every word that I put out, again, you guys, is not me just sitting there saying, okay, I'm just making a word just to be seen, or I'm just putting out a word to be monetized. It's not like that, okay? My job, my goal, my passion is to see people free and to also help people as well, the best way that I can, okay? Especially when I see a need, all right? And so I know that there are many people, again, just like me, that has gone through some things. And so that is my job, okay? My job to help people overcome things that I've overcame, okay? And so that is the goal. All right. And so I'm never about to be on here, giving words that God never gave, okay? Or saying things that God never said, okay? So I just wanted to be clear with that, So just make sure that any word that is given, you take it back, okay, to God, and make sure that He confirms to you what season you are in, okay? All right. And so again, I don't know if I said it already, but I did pray over this word, so I don't have to do that today. And to be honest, y'all, I just want to get straight to it because I'm telling you, it has been a battle trying to get this second part out. When I tell you I've been fighting to get this part out, I've been fighting, okay? And so, Lord willing, I will get this done in a timely fashion so that I can get on with the next word because I do have another fresh word to give you all from the Lord. But that will be coming out in the coming days, okay? As I prepare and get it together and things like that, okay? So, still coming out of the book of Ruth, chapter 4, all right? And I did in the part one video, I think it was verses 1 through 10. This part two of the video is verses 11 through the 22nd chapter. And then that will be the end of Ruth chapter 4. Okay. So for those that have your Bibles, I'll be coming straight out of New King James Version. And for those who don't have a Bible, faith comes by hearing. So just allow God to speak to you as you listen, okay? So tune up those spiritual ears, okay? And I'll be again starting at verses 11 of Ruth chapter 4, okay? And all the people who were at the gate and the elders said, we are witnesses. The Lord make the woman who was coming to your house like Rachel and Leah, the two who built the house of Israel, and may you prosper in Ephrathah and be famous in Bethlehem. May your house be like the house of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah, because of the offspring which the Lord will give you from this young man. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. And when he went into her, the Lord gave conception, and she bore a son. Then the women said to Naomi, blessed be the Lord who has not left you this day without a close relative, and may his name be famous in Israel, and may he be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you, who is better to you than 7 sons, has borne him. Then Naomi took the child and laid him on her bosom and became a nurse to him. Also the neighbor women gave him a name, saying, there is a son born to Naomi, and they called his name Obed. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David. Now this is the genealogy of Perez. Perez begot Hezron, Hezron begot Ram, and Ram begot Amminadab. Amminadab begot Nahshon, and Nahshon begot Salmon. Salmon begot Boaz, and Boaz begot Obed. Obed begot Jesse, and Jesse begot David. Okay, and so that is the end of verses 22. All right. And so I want to highlight some things. You guys give me one. Okay. Boaz's claim in Ruth was known to all, not just to 10 elders, but also a community of people. Everyone began to speak blessing over their marriage. Not only that, because Boaz and Ruth marriage was born from the Spirit, meaning they left the matter to God concerning marriage. Their marriage would be fruitful and full of fullness and blessings because they trusted God with the outcome. Okay, and so this is again just letting the readers know that when we give the matter to God and trust Him when it comes to marriage, this is how the fullness, the blessings of again um of God is poured into these ordained marriages. Okay, and so when we sit there and we continue to be obedient, as I was speaking to you all in regards to how we must stand still, okay, and continue to stand, not to be weary and well doing, but to trust God and make sure that we are anchored in Him. This is obedience, okay? So as we continue to stand on that, I'm telling you, when God brings these things, these marriages around you guys, it's going to be full. And not only that, it never runs out. So whatever God has put, again, blessing that He has bestowed upon your marriage, it will never run out. Okay. It will be given in abundance. Okay. And then as we see that there are people that's blessing their marriage, okay, speaking life, speaking prophecy over them, and even speaking things that had not yet happened, okay, because again, a marriage that is ordained by God is witnessed in heaven as well, okay. It's not just a group of friends and family that see two people getting together and in love. People in heaven are also witnessing these things, okay. And so it's a big and it's a huge deal, because of God ordained marriage again is a marriage that is again birthed from the Spirit. Okay, as we heard that just now in my notes as I read it off, it's born by the Spirit, and so it's again born under God's will and His purpose. Okay, and so they began to prophesy. They began to again even uh, call out, or give this baby before it was born its name. I believe. Hold on, was it before? Let me see. Hold on, y'all. Give me a sec. Hold on. Hold on. Give me a sec. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so I think I was right when I said that. Okay, I wanted to make sure because I didn't want to just be telling y'all something. So yeah, they named him before or after. I'm still not sure really. But they named him Obed. All right, and then they also prophesied about them having children. Okay, and so this is big because they didn't even have no kid at that time. They just prophesied it, okay, that they would have children. So I say all of that to say that they see the favor, okay, they see the favor and the hand of God over their marriage, okay. And so again, this is not just something that's noticed by community, okay, it's also recognized in heaven as well, okay. And so it's a big deal when we allow God to again lead us and guide us in marriage, okay. When it comes to again trusting Him with our love life, okay, there's benefits to it, okay. And in just a few moments I'm going to go over the benefits of what it's like when you wait on God. So many people be so quick to be with people based on again not wanting to be alone, based on again God taking too long, or even based on thinking that they know better than God in regards to what they think they need, okay. And so they make the horrible mistake by marrying these individuals, and then they later on either end in disaster or they just don't work all the way together, okay. And so this is why it's so important that we allow ourselves to be rooted in faith, okay. When we are rooted in faith, and it doesn't matter if you all you have is a mustard seed of faith, okay, but you got to have faith, because this is what gets God, get God's to move, not God but God to move, okay, in our lives, when we allow God to orchestrate our love life. Okay. And so the benefits of waiting for God for marriage is fruitfulness and legacy. The marriage produces not just natural children, but spiritual fruit that multiplies across generations. Okay. And so again, um, Boaz and also Ruth, them coming together again in faith and obedience, it passed down from generations to generations. Okay. And so that's another thing, when it comes to God bringing, these ordained marriages together. When he brings these ordained marriages together, it's not just about romance. People think that, oh, God has given me the love of my life, but it's so much more that's wrapped into why you two are married or getting married in the first place. Okay. It's not just about romance, but it's about fulfilling God's purpose on earth. For many of you, your marriages are coming together will be a testimony to help others who may have gone through hell and high water. Okay, if I can say that. And so you all carry again um uh um knowledge on how to overcome and things like that, so that you can help future people who may be in the same situations. Okay, because many of you are in a situation right now where who your kingdom spouse was. Okay, God may have told you to let them go, okay, so you could have them back again. And so there had to been a journey between you letting them go and again knowing what God wants you to do, but and also letting them go. And so once you finally do that, there's a process that you have to go within that. See, God always sends us through a process before we actually get what it is that he has for us. And so your testimony, okay, is what's going to help many others. Okay. And so when God brings people together, it's not for just one purpose, and it's just romance. No, it's a purpose to it. Okay. And so not only that, when you allow God to put your love life together, um future generations, people who again are after you, they are blessed from your obedience. Okay. And the husband's obedience. Okay, of allowing God again to bring y'all two together. All right. Number two, alignment with heaven's purpose. God's hand is on the union before it even begins. So that means even now, and this is for people who again feels like what God has for them can be taken away. This is not the case. Okay, only you can forfeit what God has given you. But when God tells you he's going to do something, or if he's spoken any kind of prophecy over your life, he has to fulfill what he said. Okay, so what is for you is for you. No one can take what God has promised over your life or spoken over your life. Only you have the control of that. Okay, which means if you forfeit. Okay, as that redeemer, okay, kinsman redeemer did. Okay, he figured that what he had was so much more better than what God had for him, and so he forfeit that. Okay, he said, well, shoot, if I can't just buy the land, forget it. If it comes with Ruth, and if that's a whole responsibility within itself, I don't want it. Okay, and so he forfeited. All right. And so that's why I encourage many of you um to again address any hidden resentment, unforgiveness, and bitterness towards these kingdom spouses. Okay, because that's just what the enemy wants to do. Wants you to get so mad at these individuals that you don't pray as you ought to for them. Okay, which means that your prayers is not strong enough to again keep Satan from having that power over them. Okay, to make decisions and anything else. And so you don't want to give the enemy a foothold. All right. And so again, as I stated in my first video, make sure that you're again confronting whatever resentment, whatever unforgiveness that's in your heart towards them. Okay. And stand firm and continue to keep praying over these men and women. Okay. All right. And so God's hand is on the union before it even begins. It fits into his bigger plan, just as Ruth's marriage tied directly into the lineage of David and Jesus. Okay? And so just them coming together, in obedience, okay, grafted Ruth into the lineage of Jesus. Okay. And so again, this is just showing us that when God brings two people together and he has ordained it, that it's not just for just one purpose, and that's romance. No, it's so much bigger than, again, it's bigger than us. Okay. Going to 3. Public testimony. People can see God's glory on it. It carries a sense of divine favor and honor that can't be manufactured. Okay. And so this is, all of this is my favorite, but this is my ultimate favorite, because I don't want, I don't want what everybody else have. Okay. And so if you're anything like me, okay, where you just tired of people, I mean, every new trend that come out, everybody and their mom has to mimic and mock. Okay. Like, I remember back some time ago, and I think I spoke on this. I don't know if this was on my Facebook or whatever, but I had spoken about how, there was a time where people were buying Melissa's. All right. We all know those little clear jelly looking shoes that's see-through. Okay. I thought they were really cute, but after so many times of seeing people wearing them, I didn't want them no more. Okay. And it's like, when it comes to the every, new shoe that come out and you see everybody and their mama wearing it, I'm like, after a while, I just was like, no, I don't want to look like everybody else. Okay. And so when God's hand is on your marriage, nobody can mimic your marriage. Okay. And that is what I love about this, because again, there's also used to be a series that I used to watch, a TV show called Martin. All right. And many people used to say that Martin and Gina's relationship goals. Okay. I don't want any love that's been like, that's been for somebody else. I just want my own. Okay. I want to, remake and create, a love of my own that don't look like everybody else. Okay. And so this is what this is implying. Okay. If you allow God to bring your marriages together, what will happen is that nobody will be able to mimic your marriage. Okay. Generational redemption. When God brings two people together in marriage, it breaks off generational curses from your children, from your bloodlines. Okay. It's like a bridge that gaps, whatever was broken. Okay. Which is family, and it brings restoration. Okay. And so again, this is for people who think that, all is lost. All right. When it comes to family and things like that, like, we have, broken families, broken homes, and God can turn it around for you. Okay. But it's all about us coming together and allowing ourselves to not, again, be swayed, or not swayed, but persuaded by the enemy to do what we want to do instead of what God is calling us to do. Okay. Because it's through obedience that God can do his redemptive work in our lives. Okay. And without that, then our lives stay broken. We stay unhealed. We stay in a place where God can't bring restoration and healing. So it's so important that we allow God to have his way. All right. And stop believing and thinking that, living for Christ is all about him wanting to control. No, because God is not that kind of God. All right. He will never force us to live for him. He will never force us again to choose him. He gives us the choice to do that. Okay. So it's our choice. If we really want what God has for us, then we have to submit, surrender, and also again, surrender to the processes that we all have to go on before we get to what he wants us to have. Okay. Because God is never going to give us something that we are not ready for. All right. Because when God blesses, he wants us to keep whatever it is that he gives us. Okay. And if we don't, or if we're not good stewards of the things that he gives us, then we will forfeit everything that he tries to put in our hand. And so if we start looking at things, that way, and changing our perspectives on the way that we see things, it makes things a lot more promising and hopeful. Okay, for you. All right. So that was for somebody, because I didn't know, I didn't plan to say that, but it was for somebody. Okay. All right. And so I want to give you guys a couple of pointers on the disadvantages of, again, choosing a mate for yourself. All right. The marriages may function. And all right. So I'm talking to people who have allowed themselves to come together in marriage, and God never approved it. Okay. God never said that it was okay for you to marry this person. And for some people, God has already warned you and said, no, don't do it. And you've done it. Okay. And many of you may even be experiencing the consequences to you saying yes. Okay. When God was saying no. All right. And so one of those things is that the marriage may function, meaning that you could create a family in these marriages, okay, that has not been ordained by God. You can create businesses under this marriage, all kinds of things. You can build an empire within this marriage that you have created for yourself. And what happens is that um it's still not God's best, if I can say it that way, okay? It's not God's best. Even if it's flourishing, even if things is working and taking off, okay? God always has more than what we could ever do for ourselves, okay? And it's all about allowing our minds to expand enough to believe and know that, okay? That God, what he can do is 20 times better than what we can do for ourselves. So even if you didn't opened up businesses and you're making six figures, however much money you making, okay, it's still not God's best, because he wants you to be blessed to the full, okay, blessed in abundance, okay. So six figures ain't even half of what God is trying to do for many of you, okay. And so again, a lot of times people they come together in marriage that God did not approve, and so it's birthed in fleshly desire, okay. And so some people get together and they marry somebody based off of performance, okay, how they sexually perform in bed, okay, and then later on realize, oh, we're unequally yoked, okay, stuff like this, all right. Or people are pressured or pressured into again marrying due to circumstances, okay. I'll say, for instance, getting pregnant, all right. Many people think that's the solution, okay. Well, that person got you knocked up, you got to marry them now. That is so wrong, all right. What you should do, if you ever find yourself in a situation like that, is to go to God, all right. Go to him first, all right, and ask the Lord first, what should I do in this regard, okay. I don't care who in your ear telling you what you should do, okay. It's all about what God needs you to do, or God wants you to do, okay. And so many people do this, okay, and it don't always work out. And if it does, it takes a minute before you can get to that place where you can actually enjoy the marriage, okay. Because when you come together and you put a marriage together, even if there's a mutual understanding between the two, it's still hardship that comes along with that, all right. A lot of hardship, you feel the weight of those hardships between you and that person, okay. And a lot of times the hardship can get so heavy that if the grace of God is not in your marriage, a lot of times it ends in divorce, okay. That's how that happens, okay? And that's because, again, God's covenant blessing is not fully on it, okay? The fullness of it, rather, okay? Because he does blesses a marriage that he has not ordained, but that's his permissive will, okay? His permissive will and God's will are two different things. His permissive will is like, okay, he'll allow you to do what you feel is right, okay? But there's dire consequences a lot of times to that, all right? And then some people make it out on top, but still it's not God's best, all right? God's permissive will is not his best, all right? God wants to give you his best. And many people are so eager to have somebody. People are so eager to just have everything quick and easy that they're not willing to wait on him, okay? Yes, it ain't always easy to wait on God, but if you allow yourself to be planted in his strength, okay, and ask him, Lord, give me the patience to wait, he'll do that, okay? Many people probably look at me now and figure like, what is up with her? Okay. But I trust God for everything. And if I can be really real with many of you, I am in a place right now where things are impossible. But because of the way that I believe, I know that all things are possible. Okay. All possible for me. And I believe that God, there's no end to him. And so I know that, again, I'm where I need to be, because right now only God can get the glory from my life, okay? And so a lot of times he has to shake things out of our lives until we're down to nothing, so that he can come in and do what we cannot do, okay? And so that is where a lot of you may be right now. I know I am, okay? I know that my situation is impossible without God, all right? And so I believe God for everything that I don't have. I believe him for everything that I'm lacking. And I know that in time he's going to do it. Okay. And this is the kind of faith that we need to be anchored in this season. Okay. And so, again, going back to these marriages that have been built, you know, from striving, okay, within your own strength, and causing these marriages to come together. That's one of the disadvantages, that they're birthed out of fleshly desires, okay? And so a lot of times this can fool people, all right? Thinking, oh, I did the right thing. And then later on, you figure out, things ain't, I wish I would have listened to God, okay? It's what you'll be saying, okay? And so, people who choose a mate for themselves in marriage will still function. They may have children, build a life together, and even love each other. But spiritually, it doesn't carry the same grace, legacy, or covering as God ordained marriages. Okay. And so, the struggle within their marriage may feel heavier because the foundation wasn't built in God's will, but in human desire or impatience. All right. When we yoke ourselves to people who are not saved in marriage, you're unequally yoked to that person. Okay. And so a lot of times people marry people and they're not really, it's like, I don't know, it's a lot of times I think it has to do with a mixture of things. Some people again don't want to be alone, so they'll settle and marry. A lot of times it could be a combination of that, and again, other things, sexually, performance, all that kind of stuff, and they marry these people. Okay. And what happens is that hold on, it's all these things are blinders. Okay. I'll just say that. Okay. When we sit there and we base off, fleshly things. Okay. And we sit there and say, well, I want to be married because I don't want to be alone, or I want to be married because, again, time is ticking, I don't have all the time, so I'm just going to go ahead and do this. And what happened is that, those who again may have a stronger belief in Christ, and the person that they chose to marry may not have a strong faith. What happens is that there's a struggle in between the two. It's hard to be saved. Okay. If I can be, I'm gonna use myself, okay, because I'm trying to make sure that you guys understand where I'm coming from when I'm talking about this, okay. And so for me, I was able to have a chance to be in a real life situation where I realized within this friendship, this relationship, well, I ain't gonna say friendship, it was a relationship that I was in, okay? But it was a fleshly one, and I was saved, okay? If I can put that in there too. And so being with this particular individual, it allowed me to see early on and it helped me to make a decision on what I wanted. Did I want to wait on God for my love life, or do I want to strive in my own strength? Okay. And so I was able, dealing with this person, I was able to see all that I did not want. Okay. And so all I could think about as I'm dealing with this individual is, I can't deal with this. I could also allow myself to, like, I could see myself settling if I, chose to go the route that I, was going. All right. If I just chose to say, you know what, I'm going to be with this person, I really would have been settling because I wasn't happy. That's number one at that time. All right. And that's because this person, his faith wasn't where it needed to be. Okay. And so it's kind of hard, all right, to be with somebody whose faith is not really rooted in God, but you believe fully, all right? And so what happens is it gets harder and harder for you to serve God, okay? Because this person is fleshly. And so a lot of what happens is that, this person is influencing you again, and things that again is kind of contrary to God. So no matter how much you might believe, your influence with this person, a lot of times it makes it hard, okay, for you to serve God as you ought to. And so this is why you want to trust God. And I hope I made sense with this, you guys, and that y'all understand what I'm saying from this, okay? When we build relationships or marriages, again, for ourselves, okay? A lot of times it's a lot of struggle in it, all right, and God knows why you can't be with a particular person. It's not that he's withholding something good. A lot of times he knows what's on the other side of you dealing with these, people, okay? And like I said, many of you have been in a position that may watch this video someday, where you have been in a position where God actually warned you before you married, and you still married them, okay? And so that's the thing, that we don't want to ignore, because God knows, all right? He knows what's on the other side of, again, those things that we do in our own, strength, okay? And so, dropping down to verses 13 through 15. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. And when he went into her, the Lord gave her conception, and she bore a son. Then the woman said to Naomi, "Blessed be the Lord, who has not left you this day without a close relative, and may his name be famous in Israel. And may he be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you, who is better to you than 7 sons, has borne him." Boaz made things official, and now they conceived a child through their union. This is powerful because everything is in alignment of God's will, which means the flow of God's blessings overflows. There's one blessing after another, okay, which is a little bit of what I touched on not too long ago, where I say that his blessings don't run out. When you come into a union that is ordained by Christ, it's just a overflow of blessings, and it never runs out. It never runs dry. Okay, this stuff flows into eternity. Okay, these blessings. Okay, and so you want the real deal. Okay, you want what God has for you, not the counterfeit version of what you can do. Okay, for yourself, but you want the real thing. Okay, that God has for you. Okay, and so um this union of Boaz and Ruth was not just God blessing them personally, it represented redemption was completed. All right. So the child symbolized that Ruth's widowhood and brokenness were over. Naomi family line, which had seemed cut off, was redeemed and restored, which is something else that I've already spoken of. That when God brings two people together, it's a bridge that bridge the gap between brokenness. Okay, all right. And now God brings it into wholeness again and restores what was broken. Okay. This is what happens within these kingdom marriages. Okay. He births so much from them. And this is why it's so important that you wait on the Lord. All right. For your mate. Okay. Um, Boaz and Ruth marriage was a bridge that bridged the gap in their family bloodline. Their family bloodline was compromised, and before Boaz and Ruth married, there was no one to continue on the family name. Okay. But when Ruth came into alignment with God's will and Boaz already being a covenant man, this saved Boaz's bloodlines. For Naomi, Ruth, and Boaz, I'm sorry, hold on. Being a covenant man, this saved both bloodlines for Naomi and Ruth and Boaz. Ruth's obedience and faith grafted her into Israel's covenant and enriched Boaz's bloodline by them coming into a marriage God's way. All right. And so, for those who are not in God ordained marriages, there is hope. The way that you can come into the flow of these covenant blessings is if you're willing to confront those things that God tells you to confront, that again, that is causing a blockage from again allowing the blessings of God, for marriage to flow into your marriage. Okay. And so a lot of times you have to confront the sin within your life, within your kingdom spouse's life. Sometimes, again, whatever you need to make changes within the marriage, that's what you have to do. And it's all about, a God leading you guys to do whatever is necessary that helps you to be aligned, so that the flow of God and his blessings can flow into your marriage when it comes to the fullness. All right. The abundance of, again, him just pouring into your marriage. This is how it works. You have to first confront generational curses, sin, personal sin within your marriage, all of these things. Okay. And to be honest, I'm not saying that it cannot be done, but many people who have been married for quite some time and have built something within, their marriages, I mean, many people are not willing to do that, okay, because they feel like so much was invested, okay, and so many people are not willing to let this, let people go sometimes, or whatever it is that they have to do to come into that, okay, God's divine alignment. All right. And so It ain't no different from a person being rich, okay? If you a rich person first, a lot of times it is hard to serve God or give your life to Christ because it costs you everything. All right. A lot of times you have to give up all the fame. All right. Just to be saved. All right. And many people are not willing to do that. And it's no different when people sit there and come together in marriage that God has not approved and so much is invested. Rather, it's, again, their hearts, again, the blood, sweat, and tears that they say they put into it. They think about these things and also think that what they have is God's best, and it's not. Okay. And I'm not, again, diminishing, people's marriages, when it comes to people who have chosen for themselves. But this is just the truth of it, okay? You want everything to the full. I don't know about y'all, but I know I do. I mean, I want the fullness of everything, and I want it in every area of my life. And if I have to wait long and hard for it, I'm willing to, okay? Because if you're anybody like me and got tired of just doing, getting things wrong, okay, repeating same old, bad habits, and it ain't getting you nowhere, and creating setback after setback, and I did not have the time for it no more, okay? And so now I'm in a place in my life with Christ where I am willing to wait, and I don't care how long it takes, okay? And so many of you, again, have to be okay with being in this space, okay? Many people are so rushed, I mean, willing to be rushed, or have things rushed to them instead of just, again, trusting God, because he also is a restorer of the time. So when you sitting there saying that you're wasting time, or the time is ticking, or I'm already this age, and I ain't trying to be this age before I get married, trust me, you guys, it'll be good. God will make it good if you only trust him, okay? And so, going down to verses, hold on, wait. Ruth and Boaz was known to all in a prophetic way. It was not just known through close friends and family, but with witnesses in heaven witnessed Ruth and Boaz union. And that was something I already spoke about, when it comes to the marriages, that God puts together. People in heaven recognize this, okay? It's recognized in heaven. All right. It's not just about people in your family or friends, seeing two people in love, like, and even though that's beautiful, but it's not just, that, it, to me, it's bigger when you have heaven backing you up too, okay, and see that, yeah, this union was birthed in God, okay. You just want that, all right. And so verses 16 through 18. Then Naomi took the child and laid him on her bosom and became a nurse to him. Also, the neighbor women gave him a name, saying, "There is a son born to Naomi," and they called his name Obed. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David. Now, this is the genealogy of Perez. Perez begot Hezron. Okay, and I'm going to stop right there. Listing the genealogy shows that Obed is part of God's unfolding plan, linking Ruth and Boaz to King David and ultimately Christ, okay? And so again, we're just seeing here, furthermore, okay, that, people think that, again, that when marriages come together, that it's all about them, okay? It's not just about romance, all right? Sure enough, that's grafted into that, okay? But when God brings two marriages, two people together in marriage, it's about fulfilling a bigger purpose, okay? And so that's just showing us, furthermore, what, these marriages are all about, okay? And so faithful unions carry covenant blessings into history and eternity, okay? By showing the line from Perez to David, it highlights that God's plan often works across generations. And one obedient act, as such as Ruth and her faith, Boaz righteousness, okay, has long-term eternal consequences, meaning I spoke on that as well. But it means that everything that we do up until the day that, again, God calls us home, it matters, okay? Because the next generation, to come, okay, will also walk in these things, okay, whether it's good or bad, okay. And so if you're going to be living for Christ, you might as well make sure that you are always in step with his plan and his will, okay, so that people from, after you can walk in these same things, okay? Now, it's not to say that your children and your descendants after you may not have other, hardships in life, and they may not, maybe, they may take different paths, okay? But at the end of it all, you want to make sure that again they make it back to again what they were originally taught, okay? And that's again your responsibility, making sure that your children know who Christ is, okay? That you bring them up in God's way. So when they do happen to get curious about life when they get a certain age, they'll always come back to what was taught, okay? That's the key, all right? Many people don't get taught this, and what happens, they're lost, all right? They end up lost. We don't want that. So we make sure that, again, that everything that we do for Christ, that we're walking in step and in alignment to what it is that he is calling us to do. All of this stuff is being recorded, y'all. Everything that we do is being written, okay? And so, we sit there and we forget, and I've been there, forget that God is watching all things. He see all things. He's an all-knowing God, all right? These things that we do, not thinking, okay, it has consequences too, okay? But when we walk in obedience, these things again carry on into eternity for our descendants, okay? You want all of that, all right? Okay? I know I do. All right. Um, Despite of loss, Naomi's family had been broken. Now the genealogy proves that God restores broken lines and fulfills his covenant promises even after apparent dead ends. Okay? And so you know, I choose, you just want to choose Jesus. I choose him all the way, okay? And always have been, okay? Now, I ain't gonna say always have, because there was times where I was doing a lot of messing up, but I'm telling you, I choose him hands down, all the days of my life, okay? Because you just want, that's what you want, y'all. Y'all want him to be in total control of your lives, okay? Because when they're, when you're in his will, there's a hedge of protection, there's a covering, there's a security, okay? Again, that you can't even find in an individual, okay? This kind of security, you can't find it unless their hearts are being led by God, okay? But you just want everything, that God has to offer. All right. All right. And so Hezron begot Ram. Ram begot Aminadab. Aminadab begot Nashon. Nashon begot Salmon. Salmon begot Boaz. And Boaz begot Obed. Obed begot Jesse, and Jesse begot David. Obed, Ruth, and Boaz's. I don't know why I can't talk today, y'all. Obed, Ruth, and Boaz's child was a symbol of God's provision and redemption. Obed was the tangible result of Ruth's faithfulness and Boaz's obedience as a kinsman redeemer. God fulfills his promises through ordinary people who honor God's ways, okay? As I was just speaking of, obedience, okay? Trusting God and walking in total alignment, okay? This is how his will is fulfilled in us, by our obedience, okay? It's all up to us, okay? So if we choose to again backslide and stuff, we only delay and set back ourselves, okay? And trust me, I've been there, all right? I've been there where I, allowed myself to create setback after setback after setback. And that's why I was telling y'all earlier on in this video that my situation is impossible, okay? And it's due to me, okay? Wanting to be rebellious and defiant, all right? Wanting to do things that I wanted to do. And I created such, uh, you know, I don't even know how to say it, but only God can do it. All right. And in due time, you guys will have a testimony to God's goodness, because I know he's going to do the impossible in my life. Okay. But I won't say much of it right now, but I'm just letting y'all know. Okay. So just be, on the lookout. Continue to keep tuning in, because the moment things begin to shift, you guys will know it. Okay. And I will make sure that it's documented. Okay, so that you can see just how good he is and why it's so important that you live a life that is pleasing to him and that you live a life of obedience. Okay. All right. Okay. So back to this. I'm sorry, y'all. Hold on, because I was about to read something I already read. Naomi was once bitter, now receives joy through Obed. showing us that God will use others to restore what was once lost. This could be through marriage and families, okay? And so, I just want to go back, for those, I know you have read about Naomi, okay, in the book of Ruth, okay, how she was just in such a place. She was so empty. She was so messed up, okay, when it came to her, sons dying and also her husband, okay. You can only imagine how she might have felt about that, okay, and how it might have, made her feel, okay. That was a total loss, all right. And so a lot of times, and this is for somebody too, a lot of times, things have to get worse before they get better. And the reason why they have to get worse before they get better, it's a lot of times we create, like I said before, we create a mess for ourselves, okay? Meaning God has to come in and clean up the mess that we created for ourselves. So what he has to do is start weaving and shaking everything that is not like him out of our lives. So a lot of times you'll end up empty. At least that's what you feel like, okay? I've been in that place, okay? And I'm still, if I can be honest, things in my life are not where they should be yet, okay. But a lot of times the Lord will again shake your life completely empty of the things that is not of him, okay, just so he can pour into you again and do and bless you like he meant to do so, okay, before you came in and start making orders in your own life, okay. This is what God wants to do, okay. And so many of you may be feeling, some of you, okay, that's tuned into this message, may be feeling like, oh my goodness, everything is falling apart. When is things going to get better? They will get better, okay? But God first have to clean it up. And a lot of times cleaning up something don't always feel good, all right? He has to prune, he has to take away things, okay? And when he has to take away things, it does feel like a loss, all right? I've been there. I mean, I've let the Lord strip me so much to the point that, again, there was times in my life that, I was ultra sensitive, okay? It's certain things we couldn't talk about, all right? Because I was going to cry, all right? That's how sensitive and fragile I was, okay? But a lot of times this is where God wants you to be, okay? So that he can pour into you, all right? Everything that is of him, all right? And so that he can bless your life with the things that he intends for you to have, all right? So don't take what you're going through, because many people look at their situation as what is God doing? Okay, but what the truth is that God has to again make room so that he can do whatever it is he wants to do. Okay, so if you're going through this right now, feeling like things are all bad, you have to change your perspective and look at what God is really trying to do, through your situation, okay? Sometimes it takes just a shift in your perspective and seeing things different. The Lord had to help me with that too, okay? Because I think I've told many of you, I've come from a place of brokenness, okay? So my view and the way that I saw things was jacked up, okay? Because if you were anything like me, as I stated in my first video, it seemed to me that all I used to get was the bitter end of everything, okay? The bitter end of everything. And so anybody who've been in that position and have been in there for quite some time, a lot of times it will cause you to think negative, see the worst in everything, okay? Not good, all right? You don't see the good in stuff. I was there, all right? And so again, sometimes you just have to shift how you see things and allow God to just do what only he can do. Because trust me, once he's done pruning, once he's done taking out those things that are not like him, now you can build on something firm, something strong, which is the foundation of God, okay? Build your life on that, okay? Because whatever is not built in God, it's going to fall. All right, it's going to fall. And I mean, I'm not just talking about relationships, marriages, mindsets. All of these things is what God is taking into account. Okay, and so even the things within our hearts, He has to prune. He has to take it all away. All right, and so that's for somebody, okay, who may be feeling like, oh, all things are bad. That ain't no good coming from this. Trust me. Don't even think that way, okay? If you just hold on to God's unchanging hand, because that's the difference, when you going through something and it seems like the situation is not going to change. This is when you should cling to God, okay? There was times in my life where that's what I had to do. That's all I had, okay? And sometimes I had to cry a lot. All right. Cry my way out of situations, okay? Because that's all I could do. A lot of times I didn't have the words to describe what I was feeling. I just knew that I needed to get it out some kind of way, okay? And so many of you may have to do that from time to time. Cry it out. And ain't nothing wrong with that. It doesn't make you weak. And I'm talking to the men, all right? Ain't nothing wrong with you crying. All right. Ain't nothing wrong with it. So many men have been brought up to sit there and be tough. And, to be honest, I don't even, want a man who can't be vulnerable. All right. I need you to be vulnerable. Okay. It lets me know that, you're human, okay? I don't need a hard person, all right? And so don't be afraid to do that. Let it go, all right? And this is how I got through. And also hanging on to God, all right? Drawing from Him in those times where I was weak, in those times where I didn't have very much to pray about, all right? Sometimes all I had was a help me, God. Please help me, okay? Even if that's all you have, all right? It counts, and God is counting, all right? Those things, all right? So let's get back to it. Genealogy / divine purpose and destiny. Through covenant marriage, God can set the stage for generations after you through your obedience and faith. So God can set the stage even after you are long gone, okay, for other generations or descendants after you can also walk in this same obedience, okay? Again, it doesn't mean that your children won't end up getting caught up, and want to be curious in life and get into certain things. And God forbid it's not bad things, but we all been there, where we've gotten to a certain age in our lives. We got curious about certain things. But this is, again, how I ended up changing. I thank the Lord that He was with me all along, okay? Covering me and protecting me all along, even in my mess, okay? Even when I was sitting there out there doing what I wanted to do, He still kept me. And so it's not to say that your children won't, and some people, again, God ended up catching them young, okay? And I am claiming that for my own child, okay? I want my son to be saved young. I don't even want the world to even have him, period, okay? Now, it's not to say that the Lord, again, won't still allow him to go through different things, to become who He needs him to become. God needs him to become. But, it's still a thing where I want God to get him young. All right. And that is what I'm claiming over my son's life. Okay. That God gets him young. All right. As He did for my pastor. Okay. Because it was my pastor that, again, allowed me to, desire this for my own kid. Okay. My pastor was saved, I believe, at the age of 12. Okay. God got him young. All right. He said himself that he needed to be saved young. Okay. And I'm praying that same old thing for my son. Okay. And so again, it's all kinds of different situations and circumstances that happen. But all in all, your children will walk in it eventually, okay? And that's why it's so important to train up your kids, okay, in the ways of God, all right, so that they know what to do, when life doesn't work, okay, all right, they know what to fall back on, all right. And so this is why our obedience to God and faith matters. When we do things God's way, it has kingdom level impact on generations, not just us, okay? Again, we get saved and we think that it's all about us, all right? It's not, all right? When we get saved, we are called, again, to be witnesses to, again, draw in souls, okay, from Christ, all right? To Christ, not from Christ, but to Christ, all right? And so, again, people get comfortable and figure like, okay, my job is done because I didn't got saved in Holy Ghost filled. That, no, it don't stop there. People sit there and stop there and get comfortable and feel like, okay, my job is done. And it's not. Okay, God is looking at that too. What are you doing furthermore? What are you doing that's um again further impacting the kingdom of God, okay? This is what you have to, consider, all right? And so, you know, you guys want to make sure, okay, that everything that you do, that you're in alignment, okay? In alignment, and again, you're paving the way for the next generations. Okay. All right. And so what I leave with you today, you guys, is again, continue to be in a posture of readiness and expectation. Continue to seek the Lord out on whatever it is that you may need to still confront before God brings these marriages around. Okay. This is so important. Make sure that your heart is in the right place. Okay. Make sure that there's no kind of unforgiveness, bitterness, resentment, any idols. Okay. Because, like I said, these things can also impact, you know, um, your blessings. Okay, it's not to say that it again stops it from coming, but it will delay. Okay, and so that's what I'm saying to you all today. Make sure that you are going before the Father and making sure that everything is intact. Okay, concerning again your hearts. All right, because again, this is a season where it's a season for so many things. Okay, it's not just kingdom marriages. It's about God's judgment being on people in this season, and exposure. Okay, and so and shakings coming. Okay, a shaking. All right, there are shakings that's coming that if you ain't fully where you at, you may get caught up in that. Okay, and so you just want to make sure that everything in your life is right. Okay, before Him. Okay, and so I leave that with y'all. All right. And I will see you very, very soon on the next video. You guys be blessed.